Hello, everyone. I'm Diane Wilson. I'm the hostess of the Genius Podcast, and I just wanted to welcome you to the show tonight and catch you up on a few things that are happening. First, incredible news in the last week. Braindance has actually won 3 different awards. It's so exciting. I'm sort of in shock, but I wanted to thank the International Authors Network for selecting Braindance as, I'm not even sure I can say this without feeling emotional, but the nonfiction book of the year, and also outstanding true story, which is just amazing to come out on the top of a lot of really excellent books. I'm honored to be in the company and also by those finalist placements. So thank you very much. And then also the Best Book Awards from American Book Fest is Braindance received a finalist for the book design cover. And you may know that that's directly from the art of a North Carolina artist whose name is Deguire. And he leased us his art and let me share it. So I am so honored. It's beautiful. And thank you very much for the prizes. Anyway, just moving on here, December the 9th, we're going to have a virtual kind of a book signing celebration. Someone who was reading my book in Cape Town, South Africa, encouraged me to have an event where she could attend and invite people, and people could meet me and I could meet them. And we can celebrate, do some reading of the book. It will be great for anyone who's read the book and want to ask me some questions or meet me, or people who are interested in reading Braindance and haven't, or if you're looking at it for your book club. So feel free to register at my website, which is dianegwilson.com under events. It's dianegwilson.com. Okay, so this podcast I had is perfect for this holiday season. Lisa and I have one thing in common. Our mothers weren't our favorite people, and it feels like freedom to say that out loud. But I think many of us walk into the holidays feeling like we should have these perfect families and they should behave in perfect ways. But the reality is that many of us don't. And in fact, in the global pandemic, maybe you are absolutely struggling with having losses in your immediate family, or huge challenges of health yourself. So this is you'll love this podcast. Lisa's story goes way beyond family issues to the fact that she had an unthinkable accident, and you'll hear about that. But her body was covered 65% of it with third-degree burns. But she's now a psychotherapist and has been for 30 years, and she found family and resilience, and she teaches that. So I think you'll really love this and benefit. So stay tuned with us. There'll be much to learn, and I think you'll love it. Thank you. So tell our listeners, what is it that you do, and tell us about your book, how you came to write this.
So my professional training is I'm a psychologist. I got my doctorate in psychology about 30 years ago or so. So that's what I do for a living. I came to that having survived what might seem to have been an unsurvivable childhood as a childhood burn survivor and the survivor of really multiple traumas as a kid. And so I have, been through a pretty extraordinary journey, actually, of a lot of really serious problems, but was lucky enough to get a great education and to have my vision of what I wanted to do with that. So I'm a psychologist. And also at this point, I am an author and a speaker and a blogger.
So you've taken the things that happened to you in your childhood and your accident, the burn injury, and turned it into something that's helpful to others.
Yes.
So at what point did you know that you wanted to write a book?
Yeah, so and that's actually a good question with the complicated answer. I had wanted to write my memoir for years because, again, I have survived something that I think a lot of people might think to be unsurvivable and still have built a really pretty brilliant and beautiful life. The problem in writing my memoir, though, was that I needed to wait until both my parents had passed away.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason for that is that they were part of the journey of what made it hard. They didn't mean to be, but they were. My parents were, brilliant and amazing people, but they were not able to be great parents for me or my brother. And I actually really wound up doing a lot of damage, particularly my mother. So I waited until my mother had passed away. And 3 weeks, literally 3 weeks after she died, I sat down and I began to write my book, Flashback Girl. And it poured out of me. Like within a year, this book was like in my computer, done. Because I think that's what happens when you hold a story in for that you want to tell for a really long time, is it just kind of almost arrives fully formed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
I think it's such a relief to hear people speak honestly about their childhoods. And I think there are those of us who had not childhoods that were very challenging. And I think there's always that pull to want to say that, oh, this was better than it was or whatever. But we feel most comfortable talking about it after our parents have passed because we don't want to feel disloyal or put them at disease, but the truth has to come out. So good for you.
Well, and sort of to your point, Diane, I think that many people have had not great childhoods and have been raised by people who were decidedly imperfect. And I don't mean that parents mean to do harm or that they didn't do the best they could, but for a lot of people, the best you can do is not that great. And so there's a lot of us that, have had some real pain as children, the way we've been raised. And as you say, there's not a lot of space, I think, in our society to be honest about those stories. It can be seen as being disloyal. It can be seen as being ungrateful. It can be seen as being, you can't speak ill of the dead. And I don't know that really helps people, honestly, because then that leaves people who are currently suffering feeling like I'm the only one who's gone through this, but that's just not true. So, for example, with my book, Flashback Girl, there are two major groups of readers that I hear from constantly. The first group are other burn survivors, of which there are thousands and thousands in this world. So I hear a lot from them. The second most common group I hear from are people who have had really difficult relationships with their mother.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of them say, like, nobody talks about this. No one, and so I talk about it. And I don't talk about it in a way that's mean or I don't even think ungrateful, but I am honest. My mom probably really shouldn't have been a mom.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's just kind of a relief to hear people say things like that. Yes. Oh my gosh, that's so honest. Unbelievably, yes. Yeah, I'm from a family of 10, and I'm not sure my mother wanted 10 kids, and it sort of resonates through our experience. But I mean, you just feel pulled to want to talk about all her good strengths, and people reflect on it and talk about, like, in good terms. But honestly, huge challenges go with these situations, and not being honest about it doesn't really help
Yeah. It leaves
people.
people feeling isolated, people who are suffering. One of the things I joke about a lot with people is like trying to find a Mother's Day card from my mother.
Yes. Really? I know.
Card. It's like, no, and no, and
Yes.
there don't seem to be cards about like, thank you for doing your best and happy Mother's Day, which is basically what I could have said to her,
Yes.
what I could have said that was honest and true. And it's I don't know, there's a lot of pull in our society to pretend that people are all great and wonderful and fabulous, and like, who is? I mean, I'm not. I are you?
I'm not. No.
Yeah.
No way.
Mm-hmm.
I know. Yeah, that's a very honest thing to say. Oh my gosh. I just remember being in situations with, and this just makes me honestly feel sort of guilty to my siblings who, we all had different relationships with my parents, but it's like, oh, but you love your mom. And it's like, maybe not. My dad, yes. But I mean, just to be really discerning, or to be, yes, it's not all a Hallmark card, but yes, good for
Diane,
you.
I have to share something with you, given what you just shared with me there. And I'm not, I promise you, I'm not going to sit here and read my book, but there's something I have to share with you. Because at my mother's funeral, I talk about how like I had really nothing that I could say at her funeral, which is not like me. And I talk about how I really couldn't figure out anything to say. I had no words for my feelings and nothing to say that seemed appropriate. Quote, I can't stand my mother, but I used to adore her. Quote, my mother is the most selfish person I know.
Oh.
Quote, if you think she's a good person, then you just don't know her well enough.
Oh. Sorry, don't mean to laugh, but yeah, I mean, just the expression on your face, it's like you really do not know her. Yes.
And
oh my gosh.
And so I should maybe give a little backstory here.
Yes.
So people just don't think that I'm, again, a very negative and ungrateful person. My journey with trying to live with my mother starts the day that the fire started when I was 4. My mother went to light a barbecue and I was standing right next to her. And she took a can of something she thought was lighter fluid, poured it on the coals, went to light them, they didn't light. She took that can again, and that can actually turned out to be highly flammable household solvent and not lighter fluid. Poured it on the coals, and this time they erupted in flame. And so I'm like right next to her, and we're both now completely on fire. And my mother realized in that moment that the only way to save herself was to run through that flame and down into the lake, because we were right on a lake. And that's what she did. But she left me in the fire.
Oh my gosh. Oh.
It was my father who rescued me from that situation. So that happened.
That's so basic to your life. Oh my goodness.
And then following upon that, my mother didn't come to see me much in the hospital, left me alone a lot, and was really very neglectful. So what I'm saying when I shared those things with you comes from a place of, real pain.
Oh,
yeah. And again, she was brilliant. She was a concert pianist. She had perfect pitch. She was a great cook. She was a great baker. She was a beautiful gardener. She played croquet. Like, she did all these things, made stained glass. She was amazing. But she shouldn't have been a mother.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh
I
my
just wanted to
gosh.
explain myself a little, just in case people are like, this woman's being so mean to her mother. Like, I got my story. Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. I don't know about you, but doesn't it sort of like release things to be honest about it? I think in the process of like acknowledging like the mother stuff on my part, it left me open to make relationships. Like I had, 6 mothers. I mean, I felt like, it kind of explained my behavior of really being, drawn to strong female leaders and people taking me under their wings that, just never took anybody under their wings and that kind of thing. So I think I always felt very fortunate to, at least live with the awareness that my mom wasn't for me. Or maybe as much as I needed her to be. I don't know if you find that maybe that seems irrelevant, but
No, I totally get what you're saying, Diane. And one of the things that I talk a lot about resilience when I give talks, and one of the things that is true about people who are resilient is that people who are resilient are loved.
mhm,
They aren't necessarily loved by the people you think they're going to be loved by.
mhm,
Sometimes, like kids who've grown up in terrible environments, even kids who've been terribly neglected, or parents who, suffered with substance abuse, didn't take care of their kids. As long as they had somebody who
mhm,
believed in them that they could connect with, they could have a resilient recovery. And so, that somebody could be a grandmother or a neighbor or a teacher. And I think that resilient people are sort of open to the love in the universe, and they're not just so focused on this person or that person having to come through for them in the way that they need, because sometimes this person or that person, they don't have it to give.
right. Mhm, mhm. That's a very powerful message, especially for people now, in the pandemic, and many people have lost family members that were near and dear to them. And how do we stay resilient? Then it sounds like you're saying also like keep open and look for those relationships in other places.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I know for myself, my parents were limited. I had a wonderful older brother who really was there for me, but he
Mhm.
died young. Uh,
Uh,
and so the people who really wound up being my family were dear friends who just kind of took me in, and I'm still in relationship with many people who I was like, best friends with 40 years ago, because we can do that for each other. That's one of the great things about this life that we're in, is that you're not limited just to the people you were born to. If they're great, then more power to you, but if they're not, there's plenty of wonderful people in this world. There really are.
mhm. Yes, yes. So how would you describe the scope of your burns then? What were you up against?
Yeah, so at the end of this sort of 90 seconds of horror, at the age of 4, and this is in 1967, so we're talking a long time ago in terms of burn care. I was burned 65% of my body, 3rd degree. My lip was burned away, my chin, my neck, sort of my face was kind of fused down to my chest. My upper arms were fused to my sides. And I was honestly hideous. One lucky part about my story is that we happened to be on vacation when this happened. And so we were kind of pretty near Mass General Hospital, which is
That's good.
what at the time was the best hospital for burns in the country, and like maybe even the world. And
Yeah.
I'm entirely sure if I hadn't been there, well, I don't want to say I'm entirely sure. I doubt I would be here if I hadn't been there. The other thing
It's devastating, really.
yeah.
It's a lot.
Mm-hmm. The other thing that I was fortunate at was that at the time of my injury, the Shriners Institute was just deciding that they were going to take on burn kids as their new charity. The Shriners had specialized in like helping kids with polio, but by the mid 60s, polio was like, pretty good. So they were looking
Yes, vaccines
for kids. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so they decided to take on burn kids. And so I was one of the very first Shriners Burns kids. They sponsored my entire medical treatment, which is, was 40, 50 operations. I don't even know how many as a kid. And they paid every cent.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah. And that, I feel like that kind of yin and yang of my story is, I think, something that I think is so interesting about life. Like, on the one hand, I'm telling you, I was horribly burned. I'm still, I look pretty good now, but I'm still burned. I have lived an entire life as a disfigured woman. It's been painful. It's been traumatic. It's been hard. And also, I had the best burns care. I was given my burn care for free. I had a wonderful surgeon. They took excellent care of me. And that's I think that's sort of the interesting thing about life, the sort of the darkness and the light, and it's all there in just that one little story I told you.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Yes. During your recovery, your mother was recovering too, or were her injuries as severe as yours?
They were not. She was burned. I mean, she definitely was, but maybe half as badly as me.
Yes.
And she was in the same hospital as me. I didn't see her much.
Yeah.
She didn't come around very frequently. So I really did most of this alone. And it's so interesting when I talk to other burn survivors, they're like, oh, my mother was with me every minute of the day, or like, I could never have done that without family. It's like, well, I wasn't there alone. There were other burn kids who were there alone too. We made it. We did.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
To me, it's a little bit like, I don't mean this disrespectful in any sense, but sometimes my clients go, I don't want to make this move alone. I want to be, have a partner. I want a better parent, or I want my parent to be with me. And it's like, mate, you're lucky, not to have someone who's there, who's, worse, making you worse, like having a bad spouse or a bad parent who's actively involved. It's like, none could be better than trust. This could be a good thing, not to see that much of one's mother if they're not that helpful. It's okay.
Yeah. I love that. I love that phrase. None could be better. That's great.
Yeah, don't worry. It's okay. Somebody was moving. They go, I should have my spouse should be helping me, and he's, away. And it's like better than having him there and creating chaos. But no, and I think we do kind of gravitate, and those spaces open, and we find the people that we're meant to find, like you said, and create families. That's just really one message that I would like to underscore in what you've said, is that we can create families. Stay open for new families. They may come family members or people that you need to see. It's like, stay open, because they're out there in the same way that I met you, because it was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. We're at the same point in this. And I think we've both celebrated, your huge successes, and I'm behind you, but it's been exciting. But
I don't even say you're getting there, because you just put out your second book. That was my first book, so you've already had great success, and I know your first book won awards, and I mean, you've done a lot.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It seems like a life ago, my first book, because just after a year after it, I was injured. So, yeah, it's exciting to see you, the determination, the resilience. What keeps you going now? I mean, not that it's, a struggle, but like what moves you forward? Because I just see you doing amazing things with, the book clubs and the contests, the things, the awards that you're winning, and all the things that you're doing. How are you staying motivated?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I am operating on all cylinders and have been for actually over a year now, because I'm either like, seeing my clients and doing my professional work, or I'm working on, writing or blogging or presenting or preparing to present and all that. So I do feel like I've kind of been working 7 days a week for over a year now. And, sometimes I'll whine about that a little bit. It's not like I never whine or I never take a break. I am passionate about my book, Flashback Girl, and its message. When people read it, I hear from them. I've heard from readers in Tanzania and in Australia. I've heard from readers saying, I thought I might kill myself, but having read your book, I'm not going to.
Oh my gosh.
There's been a lot of very intense and meaningful interaction that I have received from people who read this book. And that's what keeps me going, is I believe it is actually a book that helps to heal people. And so it's my job to help that book get as much, so I'm doing this, I'm pretending I'm a book that's flying, get as much ability as I can. I feel like I'm in service of it, actually.
Yes.
Yeah. And so it's exciting. So yeah. And there has been some, some cool things that have happened, and that keeps me going too.
Yes. It's exciting to see. I don't want to take away in any sense from that. I know what you mean, to be mission oriented and to feel like in writing it, if it touches one person, it's worth it. But like, to hear from other people that it's like, this made sense out of my life, or it would have to be really thrilling. It's been, with Brain Dance, it's been that way at points too. And it's really amazing. Writers, people that haven't written books, they go, oh, I could never write a book, and what's it like to do it? And I think listening to you especially, I'm reminded that if you want to be a writer, like, think about what you believe in and think about what your mission and your messages are, because the world needs that. The world needs stories. It needs our stories. So it's maybe easier and just makes more sense to do it from that perspective. But tell me more about the messages of your book. I know we've talked into some of them, but like, what are you especially aligned with?
So the subtitle of Flashback Girl is Lessons on Resilience from a Burn Survivor. And it's my memoir of going through these multiple traumas and building a beautiful life. But there's also, at the end of every chapter, there's a brief kind of standalone lesson for the reader about whatever it is I've just been talking about. So at the end of a chapter that's about, going through all these burn treatments, there's a lesson about surviving physical pain. For chapters that are on, there's been some family suicides. There's subtitle lessons on how reasons to stay alive, and so on and so forth. So this is the psychologist in me actually stepping back from the content of the book and saying, hello, reader, please think about this for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the book resonates with people on multiple levels. One, it's just the good story that pulls you along. And two, it's this sense of like, okay, like, yeah, this person's had an incredibly hard life. These are her suggestions of how I can do this too. And that combination somehow is super compelling.
Yes, absolutely. There is that question of how to approach memoir and the lessons. And it sounds like your book is good in the sense that it pulls things out that people can work with. And it sounds like not just burn survivors, but a lot of people that have come up with challenges. And this is a time of challenge. These are, sometimes I call them the dark ages. These are times that, we are all surrounded by incredible challenges. And so it's helpful to read about people that have really overcome significant challenges like you have.
Mm-hmm. And I think, certainly one of my major messages is like, resilience is possible. Resilience is even common, and you can get better at it, and you can help other people get better at it. That, life might seem like you are the most unfortunate person in the world. And I have definitely looked that way. And I was, but I'm not now,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There is a way out of this stuff. And the way out, a lot has to do with our own mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And we can work on that.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I think burns, while it applies to a lot of different things, burns would be incredibly hard. I burnt my hand cooking, like in the last 6 months. And it's like everything teaches you something. It's like, oh my gosh, this is like nothing is like this, nothing. So to have 3rd degree burns on 65% of your body is just unbelievable. It's, it's hard to fathom that kind of pain.
Is your hand okay? That doesn't sound good.
It was amazing. I had this aloe vera. I poured aloe vera on it. And then I read, of course, Google everything, right? It's like, what do you do? It hurt so much. It was unbelievable. And then you're not supposed to put it on if it's 3rd degree, but 2nd degree, it's okay. And anyway, it was very stingy for a whole day. And then it was gone. It was entirely gone, like no blisters, no nothing. So, but I just feel like everything teaches me something. Everything, it's like, this is what this would feel like. And I think about the same time, maybe you and I both had a friend on social media who is a burn survivor too, who was making reference to what he was going through. And it was just, I think I find myself going, I wonder what he feels like. I wonder what this is like for him. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's interesting how those things happen. But well, so I think tapping into our genius is tapping into our resilience and using crisis as a way of being creative. But that just, those words don't feel big enough to describe your life or your book. So that's very exciting.
I don't know. Again, I think my story is particularly dramatic, but I think life is pretty hard for all of us sooner or later. Mm-hmm. I really do. And yeah, I mean, I have kind of this dramatic story, but everybody goes through something sooner or later. And that's just part of the human condition. And I sort of my hope in what I'm doing in terms of writing and speaking and all that is just to say, like, look, if life hasn't come for you yet, it's going to at some point, but don't be scared, because you can get through these things, because I did, and you did, and so can everybody else with the right mindset. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, it's been great having you here today. I am very excited to share this, and I was for a long time hoping this would happen. And it's exciting to follow along on the things you're doing and what's happening. It's very inspiring, I think, as a person, for other writers. I think you are inspiring other writers to find their stories too, I'm sure.
I hope so. It's a tough road, as you well know, Diane. It's not an easy road, but it's very fulfilling, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Thank you again for being here, and I hope you'll come back. Good luck with your book.
Thank you so much. And good luck with Brain Dance. And thank you so much for having me on today. I really, really appreciate it.
Just a quick thanks to the people that make this podcast beautiful. And that's Dan Schiffmacher, who's a editor and production person for me, and I greatly appreciate it. And thanks for my guests, Elise, and all the other people that have come into this network, this community of people that have contributed to the Genius podcast this year. So thank you very much. Come back again if you're listening. We are at geniuspodcast.us, and my website for my services is dianegwilson.com. dianegwilson.com, all one word. Thank you.